Hey guys, this is a market update. Absolutely unprecedented times for crypto. That is the theme of this video. We're going to look at the Bitcoin price chart right here. We're also going to look at the Bitcoin dominance chart because obviously this is reversing. Bitcoin is becoming more dominant. Altcoins are selling off, and I want to look at the relationship between that and some key levels that you should look at in terms of the Bitcoin price and altcoin prices. And towards the end of this video, I'm going to look at Ethereum because we're getting closer to the merge, but there's a few things coming out, specific bits of FUD about the merge as well, which could really affect all altcoins. So definitely watch till the end for Ethereum. But I'm going to get into the Bitcoin price chart right now. This is unprecedented. 9 straight weeks of declines. This is the weekly chart that we have right here. I'm over on Bybit, as you can see. 9 weeks of declines is the worst performance for Bitcoin ever in 13 years. It has never declined for 9 straight weeks in a row. So we've just broken that record right there. Obviously not great. It's absolutely brutal, the hammering every week coming down. But just to give you some key levels right here for this market update, I've drawn on about 25,000. Like I said in other videos and market updates, that's really the only level I can see on this chart as a specific price point that we may congregate around. This is for the weekly, so keep that in mind. But you can see that, looking back on the chart, there really isn't much in terms of areas of value or support and resistance anywhere near these levels. We've basically broken through all of the key levels that I was looking for, which was essentially 30K. So you can see down around here on the chart, we have a few intra-week moves right around that 30K level once, twice, and then we're congregating around this time. The reason I've done this line here at 25 is because that was the lunar blow up wick down to 25. So obviously we recovered a lot from there, and the stock market is recovering right now. So I want to look at some key economic data that is going to shape how Bitcoin is traded and therefore altcoins as well. If we go over to the daily chart, you can just see the consolidation around 30K. So I'm going to switch to the day chart, and you can definitely see this right here. Again, it looks fairly bearish to me. You're kind of getting lower highs right here. It's a consolidation with a lot of buying around this kind of 28 level. So there obviously are a lot of buyers in here, but the sell-off from the market is still continuing, and we would assume if the stock market doesn't rally or kind of is flat next week, Bitcoin's not going to do much either. But I think looking at the stock market is a good proxy, but also some economic data as well. So I'm going to get into that now. If you want to trade on Bybit, if you do trade, short term and trade futures, Bybit will give you a deposit bonus up to $4,000. So you can just deposit some crypto on there, and up to $4,000 they'll give you as a deposit bonus. So check that if you are a trader. I'll leave that link in the description. But we can see the Bitcoin dominance chart here. This is really interesting as well. Now you can see that essentially Bitcoin dominance is falling away gradually over time. This is a long-term trend I'm looking at here. And obviously we've got the moving average, the 200 period moving average here, which is telling us that essentially over time, Bitcoin dominance is falling away. This makes sense. If you think about the real long term and the way that assets are valued, Bitcoin is only one asset, and it's more of that store of value asset. And it's also more mature. As crypto grows in general and the market becomes larger, there are just going to be far more players in the altcoin space in terms of, networks and other types of business that accrue value over the long term. And so I expect Bitcoin dominance to gradually fall over time. But of course, during a bear market, what we've seen is it's gone from down here at the low at 40%, and it's risen up at 47%. We are now hitting resistance here, although I think this may continue a while as a few projects that do need to, continue down further kind of get sold off and never recover. So interesting to see whether we meet resistance here or whether we climb our way back up to maybe 50. I suspect over the long term, this will be a series of lower highs as Bitcoin dominance falls gradually over the long term. In a bear market, do expect Bitcoin to come down, but be much better than the altcoin space in general. Now, really, if you're in altcoins, the major thing to watch out for is Ethereum. Most quality alts or businesses that have some sort of revenue are built on ETH or have a very tight relationship with Ethereum. And really what we're looking for is the merge to kind of bail out some of these alts which are just getting sold off. Now, what we can see here is the Bitcoin ETH chart. So Ethereum has been performing extremely well against Bitcoin, for a few years now, but this is going back to May 21, so literally a year ago. You can see the 12-month chart right here. ETH is kind of really solidifying itself as valuable in comparison to Bitcoin. And what we've seen here is essentially a sell-off down to kind of range lows. So again, we are at a support level, just like the Bitcoin chart is really at this kind of generational support level at 30, really expecting some sort of bounce here, if any. Again, Bitcoin dominance moving up to resistance, and Ethereum kind of moving down to this support level. Can it go lower? Of course. Really specific to Ethereum is the merge, and there's been, some FUD around that. So that is why this got sold off recently. Alts and Ethereum really are specifically all about the merge going well. If that goes well, this could really bail out the altcoin space and actually see a bid come into that space again. So definitely a lot of eyes on the merge, supposedly happening in August, but a lot of FUD around that and news this week. Before I get to that specific news, I want to look at some economic data, which, tells me where the buyers are for Bitcoin and alts at the moment, which is, not here. So inflation data is so important for the markets. And you've seen the stock market rise towards the end of this week because inflation, or some economic figures that show us inflation, have just started to roll over. That's what the Fed wants. That's generally good because the market has been whacked by the Fed. Inflation coming down means that they can potentially start to ease off and become a little bit more dovish, which is going to help equities and risk assets a lot. So that's something that we want to see. What you can see here is this is used car sales just falling off a cliff. That's good for inflation generally, so that is good news. But the consumer is getting absolutely whacked. This is total revolving credit. When credit goes up, that essentially means that consumers are having to borrow because things are tight. They don't have any extra income, and so they need to borrow more on their credit cards, right? You look at the personal savings rate, it has been absolutely walloped. What is this chart telling us? This is when the US government helicoptered free money for everyone. And obviously that coincided with Bitcoin and alts rising. And you can see the savings rate just falling off a cliff right now. So this is telling us that essentially economic data is rolling over and inflation is going to start coming down, potentially making the Fed kind of pivot and turn more dovish, because this is not great news for the economy. And so what they may have to do is actually start becoming a little bit more dovish and start, not easing, but essentially holding off all of their interest rate rises and quantitative tightening. Why this chart is extremely important for Bitcoin and alts is because the main buyer of altcoins especially is retail, and if retail doesn't have extra cash lying around, then there is no marginal buyer for altcoins, and so that is why you see these big sell-offs. Until this reverses, then we're not, in my opinion, not going to see too much in terms of the altcoin space, kind of growing and getting a solid footing again. However, a lot of much cleverer people than me are saying, what we're seeing now is really pause for thought, and the Fed is going to look at this and say, okay, maybe towards summer and the end of summer, we don't have to keep walloping the market with interest rate rises, and they can start to ease off, normalization. And that is why the stock market is looking, a little bit healthier towards the end of this week, is because forward looking, 6 months in front, forward looking, saying the Fed's not going to be as tight, and bond rates and bond yields are telling us that as well. It's a very complex picture, but we are in a bear market, both from the price side and just the general sentiment side. And so if you're a long-term investor, this is when you pick up investments that you think will do well in the next bull cycle, or at least survive through this. It's difficult to buy in bears, but these are typically the best times to buy if you have a long-term mindset. It's obviously very difficult to keep buying, and trying to time markets is something that I would never recommend because it's almost impossible. When it comes to Ethereum, essentially what happened is one of the test nets had an issue that would potentially be really quite bad if it was on the main net, but it wasn't on the main net. And if you look at some of the Ethereum devs while they're coming out, they're saying why this could have been a big deal, but in the end it was not really. The whole point of test nets is to test out these things and see these bugs, and essentially this reorg that happened would be extremely unlikely to happen on the Ethereum mainnet. The Ethereum merge really is the one specific actionable item that will make or break Ethereum, and therefore most of the top quality alts as well. If this gets really delayed for a long time, expect a lot more red and carnage, If this goes well and potentially is confirmed for August, we might see a little bit of a bid up for, Ethereum-based altcoins. It really is a very complex picture for crypto right now. And I think all of that speculation has completely left. So what you're looking at now is really fundamentals. Can the economy somehow survive? Is the Fed going to pivot and become a little bit dovish? And then what are the fundamentals for Bitcoin in terms of adoption, the amount of people using it, the amount of companies that are integrating it, and then the Ethereum merge. So it's all about fundamentals and specifics for me. All of that speculation is just not there. And so if fundamentals aren't there, then neither will the price of any of these assets right now. That's in my opinion anyway. If you do want to go ahead and trade short term, I'll leave the Bybit link in the description. They'll give you up to $4,000 as a deposit bonus just for short term traders though. If you want to hodl like I do, I'll leave the Nexo link in the description. If you're in Europe or the UK, I'll give you $25 of BTC with your first deposit as well, which is always helpful. I'm James with MoneyZG. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.